Well, hello,
Hello, Sharon.
Beth. Thank you for taking the time to be here with me today. And thank you for agreeing to do this. I've been your client and then student for well over 3 years now. And I find that knowing you as well as I do, um, in a professional sense, um, I your name is on my lips at least once a day. And
Well,
I, I just thought, with so many people in my circle, both small and larger, who ask me what it is that you're about and what it is that you do, what you uniquely offer clients and students. I thought, you know what? Let me see if Beth would agree to come and talk about herself and her process and her backgrounds. And so here we are today.
sure. Let's do it.
Thank you. So why don't we start with, can you just introduce yourself and tell my friends what it is that you do?
Well, my name is Beth Ellen Baker. I also go by Dr. Baker because several years ago I was awarded a doctoral degree in recognition of years of service in my field, which would be in pastoral counseling care. And I graduated from Illinois State University in 1976 with a bachelor's degree in secondary education with an English major and a home ec minor. And assumed that I would go on to a career in education like my father and previous generations of his family. I'm from a family of educators.
Mhm.
And I'd always been interested in teaching, even as a small child. I taught my baby brother to read when he was a toddler, and I was 6, 7 years old. Loved it.
That's
Um,
lovely.
yeah. He was fun to teach. He was a wonderful little boy. And after my educational degree, I did teach short courses, and I did stints of substitute teaching and related for some years until I began to realize that the public school system where I wasn't really going to allow me the scope for offering the service as a public servant that I really wanted to give. And so I spread out into several different things. I mean, I've had people jokingly say, "Is there something you haven't done?" Yes, there is. You do not want me to be your auto mechanic. Never. Someone else should do this. Uh, Nothing against it. It's just not my bag. And over time, I somewhat organically came into more and more into issues of the body mind connection. I already had a background, believe it or not, beginning in high school, an interest in the human psyche, i.e., psychology, and had my very first book I ever read was The Transparent Self, which I would recommend to anybody to this day. The premise is that the counselor or the therapist is transparent, open about being a real human being with fellow human beings in the context of the counseling,
Mhm.
which I practice and believe in to this day, many, many decades later. And
Well,
my
can I just ask you, how do you demonstrate that to a client?
um, I where it's appropriate, where it is not a distraction, but rather a benefit and an encouragement and possibly even an inspiration. to the client. I am willing to bring up aspects of my own life. I had a problem with this, and this is how I was able to get through this. You can too. That's a very, very, very simplified way of looking at it. I look at it as if like being down in, if someone has to dig a hole, and getting reacquainted with oneself and reintegrating can feel like digging into a hole, almost literally at times. I like to get down into the hole and take direction from my students and clients and dig with them, shoulder to shoulder, rather than I'm behind the desk, you're over there twisting a hanky, who the hell are you?
Right.
You know, I'm I I have the advanced degree and the experience, and for heaven's sakes, I'm 73 years old. I've been around the block a few times, but you in your heart of hearts, even if in everyday life we lose track of ourselves for various reasons and we're suffering, I see each of us as sacred within, in the deepest sense, that we were made for a full life, and that we can reconnect with that original plan for our lives. Should I get back to my personal history, or should we just leave that on hold? You tell me.
No, no, I'm intrigued with your personal history. So sorry I took you off on a tangent.
Sorry, that's
Get
fine.
back to
That
it.
that actually fits. So my very first real teacher of human psychology was Dr. Raymond Robertson. He in the Chicago area, and I was his client, or as you might say, patient, because he was a doctor of psychiatry. But that was in the old days when even a psychiatrist would actually take a whole hour or more to listen to his or her client and to interact mind to mind and heart to heart. There was no 3 5 minutes. Here's your prescription. Get out of here. It was
Yeah.
human.
Yep.
It was humane and human. And Raymond Robertson was an extraordinary individual. He loved his clients. He loved his students. And I don't know that it would have absolutely mattered what his school of psychology was, but it was Gestalt therapy. And that was a wild and woolly era, the
Mhm.
60s and the early 70s. So a lot of crazy things went on, but a lot of good things too. And that also was the era of the human potential movement. And, in this day and age, some people still talk about positive psychology rather than focus on something's wrong with you. Um, something you were born with something very right about you. Let's find it and help you enjoy it. So these are
Beautiful.
my foundations. Yeah. And then I went on to become an educator, and I love teaching. I've had some wonderful adventures. Especially love junior high students because they're wild. I love the wildness of them. Somewhere between being children and adult, it was just exciting and fruitful and exhausting. But then just to go over several years, when I got married and had a child, my life fell apart because I had inner conflicts in my own psyche that I had been able to table to some degree for all those years, until I looked into the eyes of my own little child, and it hit me like a truck that I was a baby and I was a little child, that people who ought to have loved me, and I don't say this to judge them, I'm describing the situation, hurt me terrifically. And seeing my own child, it's like my defenses against my own suffering fell apart. And I found that I had to go get some guidance and direction and support for myself if I was going to continue literally living to be a good mother and raise my own child. And this led me on a journey of 20 years. I was a student and a protege, if you will, of Dr. Harvey Honig, a Jungian psychotherapist. And I owe a great deal to Harvey, in some cases, my very life, because when we examine old suffering, it can be abysmal and discouraging beyond description. We need someone to help us keep our lips above the water when we grapple with troubled things in our lives that we left behind.
Right.
And during this whole period, I took lots of different courses, lots of different trainings, broad range. I mean, I come from an educational background. I always want to learn. I'm learning every day. I learn from you, for heaven's sakes, a great deal. Of course I do. And eventually, over a long period of time, I found myself becoming expert at what I was doing. Because as I discovered how to be my own Houdini, to get out of the confusion and concerns and the things that held me back, I found myself naturally being able to coach and encourage and inspire others to do so likewise. And then one day I got a big flat envelope in the mail, and I thought, what could this be? And lo and behold, I was awarded the degree in recognition of years and years of service that I just simply did because it felt natural. And that was instigated by a senior colleague, an actual psychiatric professional, which I am not. I'm a counselor. Although I have many decades of experience, I didn't go into the psychiatric field per se. And I looked at it and I said, well, God has a sense of humor. This is great. And I also, around that time, I was getting more and more conversant with what I like to call a handy tool, but it's a lot more than that, called EFT, meridian tapping.
Yes. So
And
you and I have done extensive
yes,
EFT work, and this is one of the reasons that I talk about you almost on a daily basis to my friends, because I'm so impressed with the wide range of issues that the EFT tapping helps with. That I feel like it's a tool that everybody should have. And so, I've recommended you as the ideal person to at least initially teach people the method, and also to teach some nuances that I haven't seen done by other EFT practitioners. But why don't you go ahead and talk about the EFT?
sure. So EFT is very interesting trend. For several years, it was poo-pooed in the mainstream, but in the last couple of decades, it's come into more mainstream understanding. But it really goes back thousands of years. Um, Asian health systems, whether it would be the East Indian or the Chinese, the recognition that there are points on the body that we can stimulate, whether through tapping or I think a lot of us certainly know about acupuncture. EFT is a simplified, very basic approach to acupressure, where all you do is, for example, tap lightly.
Yeah.
There's no puncturing. You just tap lightly. And I want to give credit to Dr. Patricia Carrington, a formidable and brilliant woman who really was the one that brought all of this together into what was then the late 20th century. And Gary Craig, who had a background in sales and real estate and related, popularized it. I know some people are going to say, "Hey, Gary invented it," but he did a great deal to bring it to the eye of the public. And he actually was my very first EFT teacher. I believe I'm still one of the people in the basic training CDs for EFT. I've had people from around the world talk to me or meet me, and they'll say, "You seem really familiar." And I say, "Yeah, I'm on your training CD that you used." "Oh yeah, you're the one that argued with Gary." And I'm like, "Yes, I was." It was friendly, but uh, interesting encounter, to put it mildly. But I was very suspicious of EFT. There's all these things whizzing around that we have, this therapy, that therapy. There's seems like all these fads that come and go. There certainly were in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows? I mean, we could go down a big laundry list of psychotherapy fads.
Right.
Some harmless, some a great deal more controversial. And so the first time someone showed me EFT tapping, I said, "You've got to be kidding." Like, And I said more than that, but that'll do. And then um, I'm trying to think of how long it was. It was several years after I had been trained in it and was diligently practicing it. I was getting some results, but I wasn't quite sure. I had myself a low oxygen condition related to um, overproduction of histamine. Now, what does that mean? If you get hives, that's a
Mm-hmm.
histamine reaction. I was
Yeah.
having hives inside the blood vessels to my brain. And that means you don't get enough oxygen and you'll have seizures. 15
Right.
years I went through this. And you can imagine what a heartache and difficulty that was. One day I thought, one more time, I'm going to try the EFT tapping. This is
Mm-hmm.
part of the tapping. I'm going to try this and see what happens. And would you believe it? In less than 5 minutes, silently and painlessly, completely gone. I mean, literally,
Unreal.
my jaw dropped. It blew me away, and I was like, "What? Did this really happen?" I
Mm-hmm.
hit on the right focus, and we could talk about this in further interviews at another time. I can write about it on my blog. That I hit the target where it was that I needed to, and I was completely free, completely free.
I love that story.
After 15 years of difficulty every day of my life, all gone.
Mhm.
And I needed a reminder phrase for myself, so I thought I would rely on Cheech and Chong. I remember one of their little characters who would say, "Is no my yub, is no my yub." So every time the habit to go into the histamine overflow due to stress, I would just say to myself, "Is no my yub, is no my yub," and I was fine. I've been fine ever since. Now, that
Mhm.
isn't to say I couldn't be pushed over my limit, but my daily life, it's as if I never had the problem in the first place. It's heavenly.
Right.
And I looked at that and I said to myself, "I'm ready to take this show on the road. I'm qualified to work with people now. If I could uh, be party to healing something this dramatic within myself, I think I'm ready to serve other people." And so I have. And now I don't just deal with specific things like that. It's very interesting, Sharon. The same skills the same skill set that goes into dealing effectively with either single traumas or chronic traumas,
Mhm.
either simple PTSD or complex PTSD, applies directly to high level achievement in life for people who do not have, wait a minute, do we know any people like that? No, people who don't have overwhelming internal conflicts and stresses, whose lives are basically successful, but would like to take it all the way and steps further to more and more personal fulfillment and success. It's the same set of skills, somewhat, of course, adapted differently. And because I have the solid educational and the Jungian psychology and the Gestalt therapy and several other perspectives of understanding the human mind and psyche in my background, I'm able to harmonize the skill of EFT and a whole basket full of other wonderful skills, some of which are even actually fun, that are highly effective. And I'm able to sensitively empathize with my clients and to apply the art of um, guidance and encouragement, because I don't really provide the initial initiating guidance to my clients. Every student, every client who consults with me comes to me completely equipped with everything he or she was created to do.
Yes.
It's like someone who has a brilliant fortune but has gotten distracted from knowing where the key is or the password. And I help my clients and my students to rediscover the wealth that their creator has already put within them. And I love doing it. I absolutely love doing this work.
And I can personally attest to that, and I do frequently. And so glad that